Good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be speaking to you all today. I'm Charles. I'm co-founder of the Food People, and I speak to you today, I suppose, as someone who's spent 35 years in food and drink industry and 20 of those years in the world of future trends and foresight. And we work across the food and drink landscape, working, I guess, our intersection, I suppose, with coffee is through coffee shops, distributors, retailers primarily. But what I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about, and Jamie, I guess, has started to contextualize that, is a little bit about the broader universe within which coffee exists. I'm going to introduce you to our 25-26 annual food and beverage trends framework, which is designed to, I guess, make sense of the broader trends within food and drink. I'm going to talk about the, 10 opportunities or parallels that I've drawn out of that broader framework for the world of coffee, and I'm going to talk about a little bit about cuisine as well, and the sort of intersection between coffee and cuisine as well. So hopefully that all sounds okay. A short introduction, I suppose, to the Food People. It's a business that I co-founded about 20 years ago. We're very much a future-focused, purpose-driven business that appreciates that business models, and like we've already heard this morning, actually, that business models are no longer linear, but they need to be sustainable and they need to be circular, I guess. And with that in mind, there are two sides to the Food People coin. So one is a social business model. We have the Food People Foundation, and then we have the commercial business model, the Food People, which I'll talk, I guess, more about as we go through this segment, but both very much rooted in the purpose that you can see there on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, shifting the future of food and drink to shape a better future for everyone, because we've all got to eat and drink, right? There's a certain unity, I think, that comes with food and drink that connects us, everyone in this room, with everyone else in the world. And I think there's something rather magical about that. So just by way of an introduction to the Food People Foundation, I guess it was about 6 or 7 years ago, we really felt that if we were to deliver on this purpose, that it wasn't just enough to speak to industry and to influence and inform and, I guess, provoke thought within industry, but that we needed to have a conversation and a way of connecting with the next generations. So we established the Food People Foundation back in 2020. And since then, we've been donating 1% of revenue, a lot of my public speaking, a lot of our ebook sales. I'll talk to you more about our ebook later on. But all of that goes through to the Food People Foundation and supports incredible causes, primarily a charity called Chefs in Schools, who do exactly that, who transform food and drink provision in schools. When we started working with them, they were in about 49, 50 schools in the UK. They're now in 170, reaching about 70,000 kids every day, and really step-changing food and drink provision and food and drink education in schools for the kids that most need it. A super important part of the work that we do, and something as a team we're incredibly passionate about. So if I can shift now, perhaps to talk a bit more about the Food People as our commercial business model. As I said, we founded the business about 20 years ago. I should say, feel free to take photos of any of the slides that I'll go through. I will make sure that you get a copy of this presentation, and there's some links and so on that I'll be sharing during the course of today, which I'll make sure you get, but feel free to take pictures, no worries. We're specialists in future trends and foresights, and that is something that unites us as a team, as a group of people every single day, kind of decoding what's happening and why it's happening, so that industry, people like you, organizations like yours, can make sense of the future horizon, basically, to decode it and put it together in an order that means that you can apply it to your strategy, to your innovation programs, and those types of things. So we're all about shifting the future of food and drink by harnessing the power of trends, and it's through the power of trends that we're here to inform and inspire and, I guess, provoke thought, really, to make you think. And I guess our connection point with all of you is we think of ourselves as champions of change. And I think everyone in this room is a champion of change. You're all here because you want, either for your own business or for the broader industry, you want to see forward momentum. You want to see change. You want to see innovation. You want it to be better. And I guess that's the point at which we meet our customers. So we're here to help you to build that future horizon so that you can make transformational impact within your business, but also actually in the broader world of food and drink and in the broader universe as well. So that's a little bit about Food People and what we do. I just want to touch on definitions just for a moment. And trends and foresights are words that we use all the time. Some people use them interchangeably. And just for the sake of clarity, for us, trends is a movement or a predicted evolution in the way we all, as human beings, satisfy our basic need for food and drink. It's essentially a change, which can be a big change or a small change in behavior, in the way that we interact with food and drink. That could be a new ingredient. That could be a new coffee varietal. It could be a broader lifestyle choice or a bigger movement. And as these things, either we predict them or we begin to observe them manifesting, we then report on that information through all of our services. So that is a trend. Foresight is the ability to take that information and combine it with understanding of broader social culture, what's happened in the past. We've got the benefit of being able to look back 20 years and put that information together to be able to predict what the future horizon looks like. And it's not just about understanding what's happening, but really importantly, why it's happening. So trends are about what's happening now. Foresight gives us some indications to what's going to be happening in the future. And I think really importantly for me, and it's something I feel particularly passionate about, is that I go into lots of organizations where teams are, if I'm honest, a bit afraid of the future. They're a bit worried about what's coming down the track. So our job is to make sense of that future horizon so that you can identify what's coming down the track and why, and where the opportunities lay within that future horizon. Because the future is littered with opportunity. What you need to work out is what are the opportunities for you and where they lay. So I'm particularly passionate about people not being afraid of the future. Right, the next slide is a busy one. And you'll be able to get a bit closer to it when you see the presentation. I'd hope the screen might be a bit bigger. Anyway, there we go. I don't expect you to read it, but I'll walk you through. I wanted to just give you a bit of a sense of how we do what we do. And this is the methodology that we have developed, that we've built over the last 20 years, that really harnesses two things, and that is human wisdom and global intelligence. We probably spot trends in exactly the same way that you do. It's just that we do it on a massive scale. So my team spend about 28,000 hours a year analysing what's happening in the world of food and drink, analysing millions of observations, if you like, manifestations, the representation of trends emerging in particular categories and channels and geographies. And we do all of the types of things that you probably expect us to do. So we spend a lot of time on social media. We do a lot of social listening. We spend a lot of time analysing language. So how you talk about coffee, how you talk about your establishments and what you do. So we do a lot of linguistic analysis about where the emphasis of the energy in a particular proposition is. We obviously look at new products and new openings, but we also look at the broader universe as well, particularly pertinent just now. So we look at geopolitics, we look at demographic change. We also look at the broader sphere within which food and drink exists. So we look at travel and tourism, we look at design, we look at architecture. And that broader, I guess, creative space to look at the broader kind of themes and patterns as well. Now, that gives us a massive amount of raw information, and then the magic happens. So that's where the human wisdom comes in. And within our team, we obviously have marketeers and culinary people, and we've got some mixologists, a couple of wine experts, a couple of people from the coffee industry, actually, as well. But we combine that with a great expertise in the human sciences as well, so psychologists, food anthropologists, historians, semioticians. And their job collectively is to apply that human wisdom and that collective knowledge and expertise and perspective to identify the themes and patterns through everything that we're seeing. And we deliver that in a number of different ways. So we do things like this. Our primary revenue stream, if you like, is an information, a content platform, which 350 plus of, I guess, the world's, I used to say biggest, but it's not really biggest. It's the world's most progressive, I suppose, and innovative businesses subscribe to that content and use it as an input into their long-term business planning, their innovation pipeline, development, and brand strategy, and those types of things. And we do that on a subscription basis, and we do a lot of bespoke projects as well. So just a little insight into how we do what we do, because what I'm going to go on to talk to you about is our annual trends framework, so that you don't think that's just something that I've come up with yesterday afternoon. It's something that we've spent many years developing and honing, and the annual predictions is something that we've published for the last 15 years. So I mentioned that what we're here to do is make sense of trends, make sense of that future horizon. And talking about making sense, this is the type of thing that we produce, obviously with all the kind of granular evidence and everything that sits behind that. But this is an example of one of the frameworks that we produce. This is our 25-26 trends framework. I'm going to show you a video in a second that brings all of this to life in a lot more detail. But just to help you navigate that, in the center, you will find an overarching global driver, which I'll introduce to you in a second. And then around that, there are 4 social and cultural forces. So in those 4 colored, sort of quad-colored donut there in the center. And then around the outside, in the colored ring, you'll see some titles. So those are titles of our food and beverage megatrends. They, if you like, are thematic buckets of trends that logically sit together and are anchored in the same sort of social and cultural driver. And then all the words there in the little segments are the manifestations of those higher level trends. This is not designed, I should say, as the total food and drink universe. This is designed as the things that are on here are the things that are evolving or changing fastest. There are many things that are ubiquitous within our food and drink landscape that remain ever present and perhaps don't evolve or change that much one year to the next. So they're not included on there. This is all about what's evolving and moving and changing. This is all about kind of forward momentum. And this framework is designed to, I guess, seed opportunities to help you think about trends and future foresights in a slightly more structured way, if you like, and for us to deliver on that piece about making sense of the future. I'm going to come back to this. I'm going to show you a video in a minute that brings all of this to life. But just for a second, I want to focus a little bit on what's going on in the middle there. And really, this is all about the why. So what's going on around the outside of that wheel is the what. And this is where we spend time with the human science experts within our business, where they get to ferret around in the trend predictions and say, well, that's really interesting, but why is it happening? What's the kind of the deeper meaning? What are the emotional, social, cultural threads, if you like, that pin all of this together? And there is actually, I'm not going to show it to you today, but there is actually a separate, even more detailed framework that sits behind this. But this is really about identifying, what's happening in society, what perhaps has happened in the past, together with what's happening now that make the trends that we're going to go through particularly potent at the moment and over the next couple of years. I should say that this framework was produced, it was produced last year. It was published in November, and we'll be publishing the 26-27 framework in November this year. And that will be released at our Trend Summit, which I shall be inviting you to a little later on. So, in the center there, we have finding balance. And I think it's really important and there's been a couple of references to this already today, just to reflect on where we've been, really, for the last couple of years, and go big picture before I get into the food and beverage trends themselves. I think we can all agree it's been quite a couple of years, if not longer, actually, probably 5 or 6 years. Each year, we come up with one overarching global driver, and I'll tell you what 2023 was under pressure. Obvious reasons, right? In 2023, we didn't know what was happening to the world, although maybe we're not quite sure what's happened to it at the moment. 2024 was adapt to thrive, and the one we find, the era, if you like, that we find ourselves in, that characterizes at the highest level what's happening within food and drink is what we call finding balance. I think there are lots of reasons to be positive at the moment. You know, some of those things that were happening over the last few years, you know, as we've started to see, interest rates are coming down. Commodity prices, although we've talked about some of the volatility, if we look at the highest level, certainly within food and drink, that's starting to stabilize, although I have to say we'd expect some more, certainly food price increases to come imminently before the end of this year. But at a top line, the next 2 years are likely to be less unprecedented than the 2 years that went before. I think the only watch out is probably the things that can disrupt that positivity and that consumer confidence that we're seeing, which are the things that fill our social media channels, the things that grab the headlines in things like geopolitics, in natural disasters, in conflict, I guess. So those all have the potential. They exist far beyond food and drink, but very much have the opportunity to disrail what's going on. I think the only other thing that I would say is that whilst inflation has stabilized, so the rate at which prices are going up has begun to stabilize, I think the thing that really grounds me is that food and drink is still 25% more expensive than it was 2 years ago. So that is a reality. And over 60% of consumers, and I'm talking about UK consumers here, are either struggling or just managing financially, 60%. And I find that that's quite a sense check, and I think it's something that's the broader universe within which we exist. And for me, therefore, it is the global driver is finding balance. But I think for you as traders, as roasters, as people that operate businesses, I think agility is probably the number one thing to keep front of mind, and being prepared to move and to shift as that broader environment changes and evolves. Hope you like the coffee reference on finding balance there. And just to explore that in a little more detail, and I think I just really want to talk to here the role of coffee and coffee-based beverages in this sort of broader driver of finding balance. We've already said, you know, there's climate crisis, there's information overload, there's a lot of uncertainty, and consumers and they tell us, we run longitudinal trackers within food and drink, and they tell us that they're craving balance. They're trying to, you know, straddle all sorts of different pressures and you know, being pushed and pulled in different ways. And I think for coffee, this means perhaps less excess and more intention, I think, and some of the things we've already heard today really drive into that. It's about thinking about carbon impacts. It's about aligning perhaps tradition with, in that space where tradition meets technology. And then cafes, I think, offering both ritual comfort and functional uplift at the same time as well. And I think positioning coffee not just as a pick-me-up, but as that stabilizer and that enabler of an equilibrium in quite kind of chaotic times. And I think as coffee is a social and cultural construct, it has the ability to be able to do that. You'll remember a couple of moments ago, I showed you that wheel, finding balance within the middle, and then around that were 4 social and cultural driving forces. So I just wanted to explore those with you in a little bit more detail, because this is more of the why, if you like. The video in a moment will bring to life the what, but this is a bit more about the why, if you like, I guess the emotional, the social and cultural thread. And the first one we call eat happy. Eat and drink happy, I would say. I think the picture probably says it all, actually. I think happiness is very much the new health, and we hear consumers talking about that as well. Consumers want feel good and drink that uplifts their mood, that helps them feel joyful and helps them escape from what are still pretty challenging times. And I think coffee can be, and is perhaps for many people, sort of joy in a cup, really, whether that's, the comfort of, a cappuccino or, a nostalgic affogato or whatever it is, that moment helps them experience joy and sort of eat and drink happy. For growers and roasters, I think that's craft coffees with a real kind of sensory richness, with emotional storytelling, I think, indulgent profiles. Some of the things that we're tasting and probably going to be tasting this afternoon as well. For cafes, it's about creating that space, I think, that deliver those food and drink shaped hugs, if you like, and formats that don't just energize, but really kind of emotionally recharge, I think, because Eat Happy is not about calories, it's about comfort and joy and celebration. So that's the first cultural driving force, Eat Happy. The next one is smart spends, and I think this is a lot about value, but this is not about value for money, but more about value for experience, I would say. Consumers in many parts of food and drink are definitely starting to cut back, but they're not compromising. So I think that's really important to remember that. They want every penny to count, and they want it to be more perhaps purposeful than it's ever been before. And I think for coffee, that means things like dialing up quality and transparency. Our food and drink landscape, if I look forward over the next 10 years, it's going to have to be even more transparent than it is now. Because as consumers, we are demanding that. We want to know, and other forces within food and drink, like the advent of ultra-processed foods and all of those types of things, are going to mean that we want to know more. We're going to have to be more transparent. It's about showcasing provenance, and it's about really justifying why that extra 50 pence or whatever it is, that premium, is worth it around the storytelling and the experience. And I think it's about a mindset that delivers propositions that deliver not only on substance, but also on soul as well. So I think that's what Smart Spends is all about. Keep it real. Again, this plays in beautifully to the presentation that we had earlier on, the first presentation of today. And that is that authenticity is even more a real currency. I think consumers today are very, very skeptical of spin and greenwashing. They want the real deal. So that is about traceable supply chains. It is about sustainable and ethical sourcing. But it's also telling culturally honest stories about producers, about roasters, about local craft, and about time-honored methods as well. And it's also an opportunity, I think, for growers to really highlight what's happening from a regenerative perspective, so regenerative agricultural practices. And for baristas, I think it's that moment to really speak from the heart, really passionately about what's happening and sort of dropping the veneer, if you like, and brewing with integrity. I think that's really, for me, what Keep It Real is all about. And then the last one, so this really plays into, I guess, the human health piece, the human health and well-being. And that is the fact that age and for the ages, as we talk about it, is not a segment, but it is very much about a spectrum. And that whether you're a Gen Alpha or a Gen Z or a millennial or a boomer or whatever you are, you've got different requirements, different expectations of food and drink more broadly, but in this context, coffee in particular. And I think that coffee really must serve the whole life journey now, and not just perhaps the 9 to 5 moment, and understand how it's relevant at different life stages and the different roles that it plays. So those are, and I think just off the back of sort of for the ages, as consumers, we're far more aware of the role that food and drink plays in our overall well-being, and not what it just does at a macro level, but how it impacts us at an individual level, our own microbiome, our own gut health, and how certain foods and certain food types interact with us as individuals. And obviously information and that knowledge is power to the individual. And increasingly over time, we've seen consumers wanting to kind of activate that information, and they're looking to industry and to the broader food and drink industry to respond to that and allow them to personalize. And if I look forward over the next sort of 10 years, that's the type of thing I'd expect to see more and more of. So, I had a little introduction to the food people, how we do what we do. Overarching global driver, the 4 cultural driving forces: eat, happy, smart, spend, keep it real, and for the ages. What I'm going to do now, if you remember back to that big wheel that I showed you a few moments ago with all the different segments, it would take me about an hour or so to introduce that, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show you a video instead where my colleague Sophie, who's currently on maternity leave, back in a few weeks' time, where she narrated this video. So I'll play that, and you can listen to that. And I would just urge you to soak it up and ask yourself, what does this mean for my business, my brand? What are the kind of takeaways? What are the learnings? What does it mean for you? So without further ado, I'm going to play this. I'll move screen right for you.
Using our global trends network and expertise, we at The Food People have created a trends framework for 2025 to 2026. This is compiled of 4 macro-cultural trends, 14 food and beverage megatrends, and 109 trend manifestations. From last year's centre core of adapt to thrive, so we head this year into a period of finding balance. Let's take a look at the food and beverage megatrends that sit around our centre core. Feed the soul. The act of eating isn't simply about sustenance. It's a source of comfort, intrigue, escapism, and joy. And some days it feels like we need this more than ever. So simple staples like sandwiches, pasta, and hot dogs are elevated to next-level indulgences. Meanwhile, the lines between mealtimes blur as snackification and all-day breakfast gain momentum. And we can't get enough of all things nostalgic as retro recipes are revived and childhood favourites reimagined. No rules. The rulebook is well and truly out of the window. Fusion is no longer a dirty word, as cooks find commonality between go-to global cuisines like Italian and Japanese. Katsu Parmigiana or Mochi Bombolini, anyone? Not to be outdone, a new wave of Pan-Asian cooking makes waves. So too do contemporary twists on Mexican and Tex-Mex. And fusion isn't just about cuisines. Dishes and formats get the mashup treatment in the never-ending quest to find the next cronut-style hybrid craze. And to wash it all down, chilled red, orange wine, New World bubbles, whatever you fancy, because no rules. Treat time. As the saying goes, a little bit of what you fancy does you good. Taking the guilt out of guilty pleasures, consumers lean into the feel-good benefits of an occasional treat. From the precision pastry work of French patisserie to the K-wave bringing Korean bakery to the fore, there's something for everyone. Nostalgia-fueled puddings add the comfort of familiarity, and classic cakes are reimagined with stunning results. And don't forget about good old ice cream, donuts and cookies, which all vie for top spot, with plenty of creative twists in shape, flavour, texture and more. Big on flavour. From tangy tart to mouth-numbing spice, flavour is key to our culinary cravings. And as diners become more knowledgeable, they look to push the boundaries and demand new, unexpected flavour experiences. Cue bold, sour, tropical and boozy twists. Think pickle pasta, jerk chicken and pineapple burritos, or dirty martini pizza, with extra olives of course. Speaking of tipples, there are dessert-inspired drinks aplenty, as well as endless twists on tea and coffee flavours. Earl Grey, espresso, matcha, you name it. And last but not least, the lines between sweet and savoury continue to blur, as spicy, swalty and even swoomami become part of the global foodie lexicon. Time savers. Busy lifestyles are back, but time-pressed consumers aren't simply seeking convenience. The dynamic list of demands holds health aspirations, diversifying palates and lifestyle changes in high regard, all underwritten by the necessity for value. Once again, the store cupboard and freezer prove their worth for frugality, while technological advances present an exciting and super-fast future of drone delivery. And since time is of the essence, instant drinks get a gourmet makeover, and recipe hacks allow delicious, nutritious midweek meals to be on the table in as little as 5 minutes. Home is best. Move over FOMO. This year it's all about JOMO, that is, the joy of missing out. After all, home is where the heart is, so consumers are bringing out-of-home experiences into their inner sanctuaries and saving some pennies along the way. Happy hour at home has never been easier, thanks to innovation in ultra-premium RTD, premixes and cocktail kits. Similarly, barista-grade coffee is a breeze, as coffee tech is in world domination mode. Restaurant-quality food is also on the menu, with a whole host of chef-approved fare hitting the market. And when it comes to baking, humble homespun nostalgia reigns. Fancy-ish. The economic downturn may have tightened the purse strings, but there's still a need to indulge in little day-to-day treats. And sometimes we just want to be downright fancy-ish. So there's still a place for fine dining and luxury ingredients, but the likes of fish roe, crab and lobster are increasingly democratised. Think caviar spooned over fried chicken and baked potatoes, devilled crab sandos, and seafood buckets for dinner. Meanwhile, the obligatory fancy champagne is replaced with a glass of Cremant or a mini martini, and even grocery shopping goes fancy-ish with the likes of luxury fruit and treat meat. Simple gourmet. With the spotlight on ultra-processed foods, consumers are won over by simple, whole foods they recognise. And yes, that includes meat, fish and poultry. And don't forget about dairy, but not just any old milk and cheese. It's all about proper, wholesome, good and quality dairy. From gourmet cream cheese to cultured butter and everything in between. And while provenance is paramount, so too are budget concerns. So humble shopping basket staples like potatoes and eggs get a gourmet makeover too. Value cuts of meat are treated with the same respect as prime cuts, while oily fish like mackerel get their time to shine. Waste and packaging. Food and packaging waste stats make difficult reading. So it's time for a meaningful reduction. The best way to reduce waste is to prevent it in the first place. So innovative tech is keeping food fresher for longer. Advances in upcycling are boosting conversion of side and waste streams into valuable protein. With microplastics, fossil fuels and packaging pollution weighing heavy, brands are welcoming eco-centric replacements. Biofibres are the new kids on the packaging block, alongside increasingly versatile paper, while glass and aluminium find their place in the green revolution too. Crops and carbon. Advanced technologies are driving a digitised farming revolution, helping to optimise productivity while minimising the environmental impact of food production. Developments in generative AI enable future forecasting, supply chain transparency, and more. Meanwhile, digital twin tech helps to empower decision-making through the creation of virtual, identical test systems. Hydrogen is the new source of renewable energy, and companies innovate to get to net zero. Regenerative agriculture is set to be formally defined as organisations work to align the parameters by which its environmental impact may be verified. Plus, agritech is opening up new eco and economical opportunities, and strides in genetic engineering support the advancement of food security. Alts and plant-based. The alts and plant-based sector is undergoing a rapid technical revolution. Hybrid products sit easy among eco-savvy omnivores looking for less animal, same flavour. Meanwhile, the vegan market embraces clean credentials and hyper-real whole cultivated meat cuts with skin juices and all. Even seafood alts start to look, feel and taste like the real thing. Regulatory approval for new cultured species is advancing too. Developments in culture mediums, yield optimization and bioreactor outputs are helping to drive the next stage industrial scale-up. And protein is even being produced from thin air. Through the stages, one size does not fit all, as consumers seek tailored functional options for the different phases and stages of life. Our nutritional needs change, our preferences evolve, and our bodies have to adapt to different challenges as we pass through life. So we see consumers opting for targeted solutions. Whether that's a parent attempting to reduce their toddler or tween's sugar consumption, a boomer looking to increase their protein, a woman seeking a supplement to manage menstrual symptoms, or a new mother looking for nutritional support in the postpartum phase. You are what you eat. Consumers are information hungry, craving detailed knowledge surrounding food, ingredients and processing so they can make informed, educated decisions. The spotlight is firmly on the processing of our food, as consumers increasingly scrutinise their choices, whether that's removing ultra-processed foods from diets, seeking PFSA-free packaging, shunning artificial sweeteners, reducing sodium levels, or employing tech for data-backed, hyper-personalised lifestyle advice. Transparency and honesty are becoming key factors in consumer decision-making, and trust is no longer taken for granted. Feeling good. Consumers are increasingly utilising food and drink choices as a way of holistically and naturally managing their overall health and well-being. They seek out personalised, functional products that are tailored to their unique health needs and desires. For some, that might mean migraine-friendly foods. For others, perhaps a replenishing electrolyte after-school drink for their kids. Sports nutrition is also better understood, from clean sources of pre-workout energy to personalised post-gym recovery supplements. And let's not forget about the fountain of youth, the road to which is paved with ingredients like collagen, hyaluronic acid, and biotin.
As I said, there was quite a lot to get through. So I hope you found that useful and thought-provoking. There's obviously a massive amount of detail in there, but at least that gives you a bit of a flavour as to the different dimensions of our 25-26 trend predictions. And hopefully there's some things that within there that you're seeing manifest either directly within your sector or within the broader food and drink landscape. So what I then did is said, where are the parallels? You know, from everything we're seeing in the broader universe, where are the connections, the cutting-in points, I suppose, for what's happening in the world of coffee? And I've deliberately here stayed away more broadly from the back end of the supply chain and the agri side of things and sustainability and ethics. I've done that quite deliberately because there are other people that are speaking today that will talk to that in much more detail. And I've focused a little bit more towards the consumer end of the supply chain and how coffee is manifesting itself more as a consumer-facing proposition. So what I've come up with is these kind of 10 takeouts for coffee, if you like. They span new formats and new functions and new feelings. They're not just trends, I guess. There are opportunities to innovate and to reframe coffee as functional and experiential and emotional and potentially deeply personal as well. And they represent a future where I think coffee is much more than just a beverage. It's a ritual, it's a remedy, it's a kind of cultural connection point as well. Obviously, I don't have the intimacy with your innovation pipelines, your business strategy, but this is us saying, if we were in this broad space, these are some of the areas and territories that we would be looking at. Some of them might be new to you, some of them you might have dismissed, some of them you might already be working on. But these are designed as, I guess, thought starters and, I guess, provocations for you. And obviously, you'd need to take them and run with them and kind of work them up in much more detail. But what I've done, there's more detail on the slides than I'm actually going to go through. I've come up with a little statement for each one, which will hopefully make you think. It's designed as, I guess, a provocation, which is what I'll go through. And then when you get the slides, you can explore that in a little bit more detail. Sorry, I wish I could speak without water, but I can't. So we'll kick it off with the first one, and that is snackification. You heard that talked about in the video, coffee as the fourth meal. And the way I'd frame this to you is coffee is no longer just a drink, it's the fourth meal. In a world where time is scarce and meal times are increasingly more fluid, coffee can become the snack. Fueling energy, delivering on indulgence, and feeding the mind as well as the body. So think, protein-charged cold brews, textured lattes, perhaps a little bit of texture, a little bit of chew, perhaps a thicker overall consistency, or even coffee as a dessert. I think the opportunity here is to reframe coffee not just as an accompaniment, but as the experience itself, that sort of self-contained, purpose-driven moment. And I think the question I'd be asking is, rather than saying, would you like something with your coffee, what if coffee is the something? So making coffee the snack. I think there's an opportunity to consider coffee in this sort of snacking context. I don't know if any of you have got teenage kids in your household. I've got 3. And they think about food and drink in a completely different way. It's very much about what's happening in the moment. And, we talk about the fourth meal. Well, there's actually the fifth and the sixth meal as well. Whereas since I was a boy, I've thought of, when thinking about, what should I have to eat and drink, it's all about what's coming next. I won't have that because I've got a bigger meal in the evening. What I find is that teenagers today, and all the, not only at home, but also in the kind of broader work that we do, it's very much about in the moment. It's about making a decision about how you feel now and making a food and drink choice about now and not worrying so much about what may or may not be happening later on. So snackification generally within food and drink is a massive phenomena. And you can see just by walking around supermarkets and high streets how operators and brands are starting to play into that even more than they were historically. So the first one, coffee, the fourth meal. The next one, mood-focused beverages. So the coffee's next frontier is not just about flavour, but it's about feeling. I think that's super important. Mental wellness, mental well-being becomes a daily priority, and consumers are turning to their cup not just for caffeine, but also perhaps for lower caffeine or caffeine-free, calm, clarity, and cognitive edge. So this is about thinking about coffee as neuronutrition, if you like, infused with things like adaptogens and nootropics, but also with a splash of purpose in there as well. So I think the opportunity here is to create drinks that don't just wake us up, but also tune us in a world where burnout, brain fog, the most valuable coffee may not be the strongest one, but perhaps the smartest one. The example there, this is from one of our trend spotters in New Zealand, from a cafe called Little Bird in New Zealand, and that's a sort of a cacao, aromatic spices, a blend that's based on Ayurvedic medicine that's promoting cognitive function and promoting sort of overall mental well-being in that particular proposition is a really nice example of that. So the second one, mood-focused beverages. Third one, you heard this talked about in the video. This is JOMO, the joy of missing out. This is, generally in the world, we're all about chasing more, right? Everyone wants more of everything. So, but this is about, Jomo asks us to enjoy perhaps less, but more deeply. That's what Jomo is all about. But really importantly, Jomo is about what's happening at home. And it's about your own, I guess, personal space, the environment within which you live. And obviously, once, the cafe, and it still is, I'm not saying that cafe culture is in any way eroding, but it's about having similar experiences in the home. So this is very much where premium meets personal. So the question isn't just how good is your brew, it's about how does it make you feel, and the opportunity to turn every kitchen into a coffee sanctuary. So the same sort of storytelling around beans, around ritual, around kits. When it's done right, the home brew isn't just second best, but it can become the new benchmark. But critically, it's about recreating those experiences in an at-home context. And if we look broader than beverage, you can see, if you were to look at what's happening in sort of premium meals in supermarkets over the last few years, they've focused an awful lot on entertaining, about creating out-of-home experiences in-home. And I know from the work that we do with retailers that there's a huge amount of investment continuing to go into those spaces. So the at-home experience is certainly not going anywhere anytime soon. And those boba pearls there are a really good example of that, is just helping the at-home consumer to create that coffee shop, cafe experience at home. Next one, you heard this talked about in the video as well, two terms that we coined a few years ago. It's quite fun to see this now being, Jamie, you talked about sentences that you've put out into the food and drink media and seeing how that appears across Google, where we have the same sort of fun coming up with expressions like swicy and swalty. Coffee's new flavour frontier is perhaps a bit bolder, a bit brasher, but also a bit more brilliant, and swicy and swalty. So sweet meets heat is swicy, sweet meets spicy. Swalty is sweet meets salty, obviously. They're very much rewriting the rules around indulgence, not just in coffee. In fact, what we're seeing in coffee is actually is minuscule, really, but in the broader context of food and drink. These types of standout, slightly more brash flavor combinations are something that we see more and more of. But it's what modern palates are craving. They want contrast. They want surprise. They want intensity. And this is what these flavor profiles start to deliver. So perhaps thinking less about vanilla and more about chili maple, less syrupy, more about savory, perhaps. Because the most crave-worthy coffees don't just taste good, but I think they really stop you in your tracks. Really nice example. Some work that we had some input into with Starbucks Reserve stores. So that's their hot honey affogato and their hot honey espresso martini, just a couple of examples of that. But I think the broad point here is about not the literal translation of this into product, but how palates are changing over time, and that desire more broadly within food and drink for something that stands out a little bit of shock and surprise and stand out, really. Then we've got desertification of coffee. Coffee isn't just complementing a dessert anymore. In some cases, I think we're starting to see it almost replace it. In an era of, I guess, coffee plus or dessert plus, coffee becomes that treat in its own right. They're layered, they're luscious and loaded with nostalgic pleasure. There's been huge amount of noise around tiramisu, not only in a beverage space, but more broadly within food and drink. And it's about identifying almost like those platforms that can span food and drink and can transcend one area into another. They're not just about sweetness, they're about story and theatre, and I think the opportunity is to turn a cup of beverage into an occasion, because I think when desserts meet coffee, it's not something you just sip, but it's something that moves more into a savor space. So there's definitely more around the dessertification of coffee. And that takes us really nicely onto texture play. And I think one of the things that we've seen, and this example on the right-hand side of the screen there is a really good one, is rather than coffee becoming something or just something that you drink, it's something that you feel as well. And texture, I think, is something that we see more and more come through, whether that in different foam toppers, whether that be layering coffee on top of the foam, whatever it is, it's about texture play, particularly, obviously, in added value coffee propositions. So it's not just about taste, but it's about creating something that is tactile, a layered experience, that creates some kind of intrigue as well. The bottom example there is a sweet and velvety whipped egg yolk layered on top of the hot filtered coffee. That's from, we actually see quite a lot of innovation come out of Loop Culture, which is a coffee shop in China. So quite a nice example of that. And you'll see certainly a lot in the added value space, both hot and cold, around texture play. Consumers absolutely love it. It's an easy way into coffee. Those purists in the room, I'm sure, will be raising their eyebrows at this, which I completely get, but it's a significant part of the innovation that we see in this space. Which takes us really nicely onto kind of third culture, and I think we can all agree, I mean, some of the conversations we've had this morning about how coffee is global, but also there's a third culture coffee where different cultures meld into different propositions. I think where we started to see fusion, both in food and drink, actually, 4 or 5 years ago, it was quite a lot about shock. There was quite a bit of gimmick in there. I think what we're seeing now is flavour stories that are being born between generations. That's what we're seeing. So third culture is, perhaps where an individual has experienced different cultures in their upbringing, perhaps with parents from different cultures, to develop this evolved third culture where different foods, different drinks combine in one space. So they're actually really authentic, lived experiences that are starting to come through now. And the example on the right-hand side of that is a really good example of that. Ube buttercake lace latte. So it's got ube, espresso, miso, butterscotch, and milk in there. That's from the Drip Collective in the US. So third culture, you heard us talk about third culture in the video. Then we've got personalised health. So coffee very much becoming more than just a buzz, but almost becoming a bit of a biohack, really, as well. Particularly in the era of personalised health, it's not just about how your coffee tastes, but what it does for you at an individual level. So building on that for the ages point that I was talking about earlier on. And how, whether that be protein-enriched, gut-friendly, or even metabolically aligned to you. I think there's a real opportunity there. It's not just about the pick-me-up, but your kind of daily dose of well-being. Penultimate one is around coffee theatre. So I think we're all aware that we're in an age of kind of content where what we eat and what we drink and what we stand for as a brand, it's a representation of self. And therefore, as consumers, look for an expression. So they look for things that stand out. They look for things that say something about them, their values, their ethics, their principles. And theatre is a really important part of that because it's a fabulous kind of pillar of content. Perhaps it was a lot about gimmick, a little bit less about gimmick now. It's about creating those moments of, of story and spectacle, and perhaps a bit of sort of deeper emotional engagement. I absolutely love this example on the right-hand side that I experienced myself in Hong Kong in a cafe called Live Well, which is where you pour the espresso through a candy floss cloud, which makes what happens is it kind of rains sugar down over the top of the coffee. It's really quite cool to watch, and it's highly visual. So Coffee and associated coffee theatre. Now that can be at one end of the spectrum, that can be about craft and about ritual in production. And then you've got these sort of theatrical moments here as illustrated on the screen. And the last one, I said I wasn't going to talk about this, but I feel like I should make reference to it, and it's already been referred to today, and will increasingly be so, I'm sure, during the afternoon, and that is conscience, coffee conscience, or coffee with conscience. I think sustainability is definitely not just a story that you tell, but it's now, and increasingly into the future, it's going to be a proof point that and a truth that you have to prove. Conscience Coffee is about doing what's right and showcasing it, from regenerative farming, carbon label blends, traceable beans, compostable cups, all of those types of things. Consumers don't just want to know that it's ethical, they want to see it and feel it and really believe it as well. I think that is it's about truth and transparency. Because, obviously, we're in an era of climate emergency, and coffee can't just be sustainable. I think it has to be restorative as well. So, 10 takeouts there, 10 provocations. I hope you found those useful and thought-provoking. I wanted to just touch on another piece of work that we do every year, just before I finish, and that is on cuisines. So we spend an inordinate amount of time looking at cuisines and how cuisines manifest themselves. What food, what dishes, what chefs are saying, where they take their influence from, all of this type of thing. And this is a map that we produce on an annual basis. You can see the market appeal from niche to mass market on the horizontal axis, and on the vertical, it's where we're seeing the evidence of that. Are we seeing that in sort of micro niche coffee communities, or is it on the pages of the Daily Mail? Do you know what I mean? So what we do is we then give each one a hype rating. So how talked about is it? It's the buzz factor, basically, for each one. And obviously, this is designed to be presented in a culinary lens, if you like. So lots of sandwich manufacturers and ready meal manufacturers use this type of information. But what I wanted to do, really, is draw the parallel. And the circles really talk to the cuisines, but not only the cuisines, but the countries that are involved in coffee production in quite a major way. And you can see some of the ones on the top right-hand side. So parts of China, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, Indonesia in particular, Thailand, Vietnam. There's also Brazil, Cambodia, other countries in there. And I suppose what I'm trying to highlight here are the parallels between what's happening in the culinary and gastronomy world and what's happening in the world of coffee production. And there are bigger movements within the broader food and drink landscape that perhaps that you can get on the back of in how you talk about and communicate, and the context within which you share knowledge around coffee. And just to follow that on, don't worry about the chart itself. The really important bit is in the box on the right-hand side. Each month, we talk to consumers about the cuisines that they eat in and out of home. And the really important thing is that it is changing, and we're becoming more adventurous, basically. We're interacting with more cuisines on a monthly basis than we were. Just the chart is actually highlighting the difference between quarter 4 24 and quarter 1 25. So in quarter 4 24, from our longitudinal tracker that we run, consumers were saying that they were interacting with 4.1 cuisines every month. That shifted to 4.6. And if we look back 3 years, that was at 3.2. So we're experimenting more. Our food and drink repertoire is becoming more diverse. And just a bit of a reflection, really, from me. I think when I look back at, or zero in on the world of coffee, I see that it's always adapted, but now it's evolving with a much kind of deeper purpose. It's not just a beverage, but it's a medium for culture and care and creativity and well-being, which I find super inspiring. And the future, I think, is is more than just beans and brews, but it's about connection and conscience, I suppose, and innovation. And what you create next in terms of roasting and sourcing and flavour has the power to shape not just the coffee experience, but also the social and cultural context within which coffee exists. So I think if coffee is just the beginning, what will it help you become into the future? I think it's a super exciting space. I've thoroughly enjoyed talking to you today. There's two last things before I finish. One is I said I was going to invite you to our Trend Summit. I'll make sure this link is circulated to you. So if you want to scan the QR code, feel free to do that. It's free, so it's not going to cost you anything. I want to see a few more phones go up there. We hold it every November. You'll be joining 2,500 other people from 50-odd different countries, change makers, innovators from across the world of food and drink. Jamie's going to be talking as well. So join us for that day where we'll be releasing our 26-27 trend predictions. If you register, you'll get all the replays, even if you can't attend on the 18th of November. We'll circulate that link to you afterwards as well. So I welcome you all to join that particular session. And last but not least, I talked about our ebook a few moments ago, or right at the beginning. So this is a book that we've produced for the last 19 years. And it's aptly called 19 Years in Trends. And it's basically an almanac of where we've been. So if you're interested, curious about food and drink, the journey we've been on, the drinks, the food, the restaurants, the ingredients, that have formed the last 19 years in food and drink, then get yourself a copy. It's 25 quid. We make no money out of it. It all goes to the Food People Foundation, every single penny. So it goes towards charities like Chefs in Schools, but there are also some provocations at the end of what the next 10 and 20 years look like as well. So if you're into that kind of thing, get yourself a copy. You certainly won't regret it. And with that, if you want to connect with me, my details are on there. Thank you, Jamie, and the team at DR Wakefield for inviting me to speak today. And thank you all for your time. Hope you found it useful and thought-provoking. Thanks for listening.